She kissed his cheek at the altar, soft, deliberate, the kind of kiss a woman gives when she is memorizing the texture of someone's skin because she knows it is the last time she will touch it. He smiled. The guests smiled. 400 wolves in a candlelit hall watched the bride press her lips to the groom's cheek and thought, how tender, how intimate, how lovely that in a ceremony full of tradition and formality, she chose something small and real. Nobody noticed her eyes. They were open. During the kiss, her eyes were open, looking past him, looking at the doors at the back of the great hall, the doors she would walk through in approximately 90 minutes. Looking at the way out. She had been looking at the way out for 11 days. Ever since the morning she found the letter in his study and understood, with the quiet devastation of a woman reading her own obituary, that the man she was about to marry had already planned what came after her. But we will get to the letter. First, I need to tell you about the kiss. Because the kiss is where the story begins and ends, and if you understand the kiss, you will understand everything that follows. Her name was Alara Wynn. She was 24. Brown skin, dark eyes, the kind of face that was beautiful in the way a river is beautiful, not because it demanded attention, but because it rewarded it. The longer you looked, the more you saw. She was a healer. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind who performed miracles in front of crowds, the kind who sat beside sick children at 3 in the morning and sang until the fever broke, the kind who knew every herb in the territory by smell and could mix a poultice in the dark, the kind who remembered that healing was not about power, it was about presence. She met Alpha Dorian Ashworth at a border summit. He was everything the world tells you an alpha should be. Tall, commanding, a jaw that could cut glass and eyes the color of iron, alpha of the Ashworth pack, one of the oldest bloodlines in the Western Territories. A man who entered rooms the way weather enters a valley, completely, inevitably, with the understanding that everything in the room would adjust to him. He noticed Alara because she did not adjust. She was treating a young wolf in the medical tent, a border scout who had twisted his knee during a training exercise. Dorian walked in. Every wolf in the tent stiffened. The scouts straightened. The medics paused. The air pressure changed the way it always did when an alpha of his rank entered a confined space. Alara did not look up. She was wrapping a knee. The knee was more important than the entrance. Dorian watched her for 4 minutes. She finished the wrap, checked the tension, told the scout to stay off it for 2 days, and only then turned around and saw the alpha of the Ashworth pack standing 3 feet behind her. She raised an eyebrow. That was all. One eyebrow. The gesture of a woman who is not impressed by weather and would like the weather to explain why it is standing in her medical tent. He was done. Finished. Ruined. 4 minutes of watching her ignore him and 1 raised eyebrow, and the most powerful alpha in the Western Territories fell like a tree in a storm, completely, inevitably, with the understanding that everything in his life would adjust to her. The courtship was 8 months. He was patient, which surprised everyone who knew him, because Dorian Ashworth was not a patient man. He was a man who made decisions and executed them with the efficiency of someone who had never been told no. Alara told him no regularly. Not to be difficult, because she was a healer in a small village and he was an alpha in a palace, and a distance between those 2 lives was not romantic. It was structural. She said no because she understood that love without foundation is a house built on sand, and she had seen too many houses collapse. He built the foundation. Slowly. Visits to her village where he carried supplies for the healing house without being asked. He carried them himself, did not send staff, did not delegate. An alpha king hauling crates of bandages and dried herbs up a dirt road because the woman inside the building at the top of the road had told him that help is not help if it arrives with an audience. Letters. Not love letters, something better. Honest letters. Letters about his fears and his failures. As alpha, and the way his mother's death had left a silence in the palace he did not know how to fill. letters about the council meetings that exhausted him, and the territorial disputes that kept him awake, and the particular loneliness of being the most powerful person in a room and having no one to tell that the power felt like weight. He wrote to her the way a man writes when he is not trying to impress, but trying to be known. And Alara, who had spent her life knowing other people's bodies and illnesses and pain, found herself being known in return. It was terrifying and wonderful, and she fell for him the way you fall from a great height, with the full awareness that the ground is coming and the complete inability to stop. She fell for him because he was not what he appeared to be. The world saw iron. She saw the rust underneath. The places where the armor was thin and the man behind it was tired and gentle and afraid of the same things everyone is afraid of: being alone, being misunderstood, being loved for the title instead of the person. The proposal was in her healing house, not the palace. He came to her territory, her space, her world, knelt on the floor between the herb shelves and the bandage stores, and said words that she would later replay in her mind 10,000 times, searching for the lie in them and never finding it. "I am not easy to love," he said. "I am too serious and too guarded, and I live in a palace that echoes, but you're the only person who has ever made the echoes stop, and I would rather be difficult with you than easy with anyone else." She said yes. She said yes because the words felt true, because his eyes, iron gray and steady, held nothing she could not trust. Because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and Dorian Ashworth was in her hand, kneeling on her floor asking her to keep him. The wedding was political. 400 wolves, allied packs, territorial leaders, a ceremony that was equal parts love and legislation. Alara accepted this because the price of marrying an alpha is sharing him with the world, and she was willing to pay it. The dress was ivory silk, simple, no beading, no train, the dress of a healer who does not decorate what does not need decorating. She carried wildflowers instead of formal arrangements because she was a woman who grew things and wanted her wedding to smell like growth. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were spoken. The hall erupted with applause, and Alara kissed his cheek, soft and deliberate, and her eyes were open, and she was already counting the minutes until she could leave, because 11 days ago she had found the letter. She was not snooping. She needs you to know that. She was looking for a treaty document that Dorian had asked her to review, a medical provision for the border territories that required a healer's expertise. He had asked her to look at it. She was in his study because he sent her there. The letter was in the wrong drawer, filed under correspondence instead of treaties. A mistake, maybe, or maybe the universe has a way of putting the match next to the kindling and waiting for someone to strike it. The letter was from Councilman Aldrich Vane, Dorian's senior advisor, the man who had managed Ashworth political strategy for 20 years. The letter was dated 3 weeks before the wedding. She read it standing up. By the time she finished, she was sitting on the floor, not because her legs gave out, but because the ground felt more honest than the chair, and she needed honesty under her. The letter outlined a plan, a detailed, structured 5-year political strategy for the Ashworth Pack, Year 1 through Year 5. Alliance targets, territorial expansion goals, council positioning, trade negotiations. And in Year 3, under a section labeled Governance Restructuring, a single paragraph that dismantled her entire world in 47 words. The current bonding with the Wind Healer secures the Southern Valley Alliance and medical infrastructure access. By Year 3, the alliance will be fully integrated. At that point, a strategic dissolution and rebonding with the Hargrove line will consolidate the northern corridor, completing the territorial circle. Alara read those 47 words 11 times. She counted. 11 readings of a paragraph that described her marriage as a temporary contract. Phase 1 of a 5-year plan. A bridge, not a destination. The current bonding with the Wind Healer. Not Alara. Not his wife. Not his mate. The Wind Healer. A function, an instrument, a tool used to secure an alliance that would be fully integrated by Year 3, at which point the tool would be replaced by a better one. Strategic dissolution. They had a word for it. A clean, political, bloodless word for throwing away a woman after she had served her purpose. Dissolution. As if a marriage could be dissolved, like salt in water, simply stirred until it disappeared. She put the letter back. Same drawer, same position. She left the study. She walked to the healing house and sat among her herbs and her bandages and her medicines, the things that had always made sense. And she held her own hands because there was no one else to hold them. She did not cry. She did not confront Dorian. She did not call her mother or her sister or anyone who would tell her to scream or fight or make a scene. She sat with the knowledge the way a healer sits with a diagnosis, calmly, completely, allowing the full scope of the information to settle before deciding on a course of treatment. The diagnosis was this: she was a placeholder, a 3-year prescription that would expire when the symptoms it treated were no longer present. And the man who prescribed her did not know she had read her own chart. 11 days. She had 11 days until the wedding. 11 days to decide what to do with the knowledge that the man she loved had agreed to a plan that treated her like a lease with an expiration date. She could confront him. She could demand answers. She could rage and cry and throw the letter in his face and watch him scramble to explain. But what would that accomplish? If he denied it, she would not believe him. If he confirmed it, she would be destroyed. And if he said what men always say, that it was just a proposal, that he never agreed to it, that Aldrich was overstepping, she would spend the rest of her marriage wondering whether every "I love you" was a clause in a contract. The die was cast. The letter existed. The plan existed. And whether Dorian had written it or merely received it, he had not thrown it away. He had filed it, under correspondence, in a drawer he could access. A man who rejects a plan does not file it. He burns it. Alara made her decision. She would marry him. She would kiss his cheek at the altar. She would walk through the reception and smile and dance and accept congratulations. And then she would leave. Not running, not fleeing, leaving, the way a woman leaves when she has read the fine print and decided she is worth more than a 3-year contract. She spent 11 days memorizing. The way the palace looked in morning light, the way Dorian's voice sounded when he said her name, low and quiet, like a prayer he did not know he was praying. She memorized these things because she was not angry. She was grieving a future she had believed in that had never existed. And on the 11th day, she put on the ivory dress and carried the wild flowers and walked down the aisle and kissed his cheek with her eyes open. Goodbye, she thought. I loved you, and that was real even if nothing else was. She waited 90 minutes, long enough for the reception to reach the point where absence becomes invisible, long enough for the wine to flow, and the music to rise, and the attention to shift away from the bride. She left through the kitchen. The staff was washing dishes and did not notice one small woman in an ivory dress moving through the steam. She walked through the courtyard where the night air hit her skin, and the golden light from the hall spilled across the cobblestones like something precious being wasted. She walked through the gate, down the road, barefoot, because her shoes were in the bridal chamber and the bridal chamber was in the direction she was not going. The stones were cold and the night was clear, and she did not look back because looking back is for women who are not sure, and Alara was sure. She made it to the village of Thornhaven by dawn. Small, human, south of Ashwa territory by 40 miles. She had coins sewn into the hem of her dress, the old healer's trick, because a woman who heals for a living knows that emergencies do not announce themselves and pockets are not always available. She bought clothes. She cut her hair. She found a room above a tea shop owned by an elderly man named Amos, who had a white beard and a bad hip, and a habit of humming while he brewed. He looked at her standing in his doorway in a wrinkled ivory dress with no shoes and said, "You look like you need chamomile." She said, "I need a room." He said, "I have a room. It is small, and the window sticks and the radiator makes a sound like a cat being offended. But the chamomile is free." She took the room. She drank the chamomile. She slept for 14 hours and woke up as a woman named Lara Gray who had no pack, no mate, no palace, no plan, and no shoes, but who had herself, and that was enough to start. 3 years. She built a life the way healers build remedies, one ingredient at a time, in the right order, with patience. Thornhaven needed a healer. Every small town needs a healer and never knows it until one arrives. Lara opened a small practice above the tea shop. Herbs in the window. A hand-painted sign that said simply, "Healing House." The town came to her slowly. The blacksmith's daughter with a cough that would not break. The baker's wife with a knee that predicted rain. Old Amos himself, whose bad hip turned out to be a poorly healed fracture from 30 years ago that no one had ever properly set. She said it. Amos walked without a limp for the first time in 3 decades. He stood in the middle of his tea shop and wept, not from the pain, from the absence of it, from the sudden understanding of how much weight he had been carrying and how light the world felt without it. "A stitch in time saves 9, Amos said afterward, wiping his eyes. 30 years of limping, and all I needed was a woman with steady hands and the sense to look at what everyone else had accepted. He became her first advocate, told everyone who entered the tea shop about the healer upstairs, brewed special blends for her patients, chamomile for the anxious, peppermint for the nauseated, a ginger concoction for the baker's wife that he claimed could cure anything including bad marriages, though the baker's wife said it only fixed the knee. Word spread the way things spread in small towns, through kitchen conversations and fence-line chats. By the end of the first year, Lara Gray was Thornhaven's healer. By the end of the second, she was Thornhaven's heart. Not because she performed miracles, because she showed up. Every morning, every evening, for every cough and every fever and every old man with a hip that had been broken for 30 years and a stubbornness that had been broken for none. She showed up because that is what healers do. They do not wait to be summoned. They notice. She made friends. Amos, who became something between a landlord and a grandfather. A young woman named Bree Calloway who ran the town's only pub and had red hair and a laugh like a bell and a talent for saying the exact wrong thing at the exact right time. Bree became her person, not through deep conversations about trauma, through proximity and the particular bond that forms between two women who see each other every day and gradually stop pretending to be fine. "You never talk about before," Bree said once, over drinks at the pub after closing. "Before is a long story," Lara said. "I have nowhere to be." Lara looked at her glass. "Before is a man who planned to keep me for 3 years and replace me with someone more useful." Bree was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Was the replacement prettier than you? Because if she was, I need to see her, for research purposes." The laugh that came out of Lara surprised her. Genuine. Unpracticed. The laugh of a woman who had not expected to laugh about the worst thing that ever happened to her and had just discovered that sometimes laughter is the first sign that the wound has started to close. He searched from the moment he walked into the bridal chamber and found her wildflowers on the table and her shoes by the door and the window open and the night air coming in. She was gone. The flowers were still fresh, the shoes were still warm. He picked up one shoe, held it. Ivory, simple, the shoe of a woman who did not decorate what did not need decorating. He held it and understood, in the specific silence that follows a catastrophic discovery, that something had gone terribly wrong and he did not know what. The search was immediate. Guards, scouts, every road, nothing. She had disappeared the way quiet people disappear, completely because the world is not designed to notice the people who make it warmer without taking credit. You do not miss the sun until the room goes cold, and by the time you feel the cold, the sun is gone. Dorian searched personally, week after week, a sketch in his coat pocket. "Have you seen her?" Town after town. The same sketch, the same question, the same answer. No, no, no. The word no, repeated across dozens of towns and hundreds of faces, became the rhythm of his life, a drumbeat of absence. He did not eat properly. His beta noticed. His council noticed. The pack watched their alpha, the man who entered rooms like weather, diminish, not in size, in presence. The iron was still there, but the fire behind it was dying. He found the answer 7 months later. Not through a clue, through his own drawer. He was reviewing old correspondence, searching for anything that might explain why a woman who kissed his cheek with such tenderness vanished 90 minutes later. He found the letter, the 5-year plan, the 47 words. He read them. Then he read them again. Then he sat at his desk for a very long time, and the room was silent in the way that rooms are silent when a man is rearranging everything he thought he knew about his own life. She had seen this. She had read this letter. She had found the plan that described her as a temporary alliance, and she had married him anyway, kissed his cheek anyway, and then she had left. Not because she was weak, because she was strong enough to walk away from a man she loved, rather than stay with a man who had filed her expiration date in a drawer. The best laid plans of mice and men, Dorian thought, and then he went to find the man who laid them. Dorian went to Aldrich's office. He did not raise his voice. He spoke with the terrible calm of a man who has found the source of a fire and intends to extinguish it with his bare hands. You wrote a 5-year plan that included dissolving my marriage in year 3, a strategic recommendation, Aldrich said. Standard practice for long-term territorial positioning. My wife found it. She read 47 words that described her as a temporary contract, and she left on our wedding night. Barefoot. Alone. Because of your plan. Alpha Ashworth. The plan was never approved. It was a proposal. It was filed. In my drawer, where she could find it. Where she did find it, and you never told me. You watched me carry her sketch through every town for 7 months, and you said nothing. Aldrich's face shifted, political calculation giving way to something raw, shame. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to resign today. Leave Ashworth territory by morning and spend the rest of your life knowing that your 47 words cost me the only person who ever made this palace feel like home. I was doing my job, Aldrich. Your job destroyed my marriage. Your job sent the woman I love into the dark with no shoes. He leaned forward. You are very good at your job, Aldrich. That is the worst thing about you. Aldrich was gone by morning. Dorian resumed the search. But now he carried something heavier than a sketch. The knowledge that she left because she believed she was temporary. He found Thornhaven on a Monday. 3 years, 4 months, 9 days after the wedding. Through a medical journal. A small publication. An article about an innovative treatment for chronic joint injuries. The author, L. Gray, Healing House, Thornhaven. The technique was one Alara had developed. The specific combination of comfrey and willow bark. He recognized it immediately. He drove to Thornhaven. Parked outside the tea shop. Saw the sign, Healing House, the herbs on the sill, the painted door. The small, steady evidence of a woman who had built something real from nothing. He did not go in. He sat and understood what the old Dorian would never have understood. She laughed because she read the blueprint of her own disposal. Showing up at her door with apologies was the act of a man who still believed the story was about him. It was not about him. It had always been about her. He rented a cottage at the edge of town. Got a job with the stonemason. Thornhaven had old buildings and older walls, and a stonemason named Harlan who was 67 and needed someone to carry heavy blocks because his back had opinions about lifting that. His pride refused to accept. Dorian carried stones, repaired walls, learned that the work of building is slow and humbling and that a man who has spent his life giving orders has very little practice taking them. Amos noticed him first. There is a man at the stonemasons, Amos said on a Tuesday morning. Very tall, very serious. Works like he is trying to fix something that is not a wall. Lara's hand paused on her teacup. Amos described him. The height, the iron-gray eyes, the way he moved through a room like weather. She went to the window, looked across the square. A tall man lifting blocks, placing them with a care that seemed wrong for his size. Gentle, deliberate. The hands of a man who had learned that strength without tenderness breaks things. How long? She asked. 3 weeks. He comes for tea every morning. Orders chamomile. I did not tell him it was your favorite. He ordered it himself. She told Bree that evening. At the pub, Bree listened with her face cycling through 9 emotions in 30 seconds. Let me understand, Bree said. The man who filed your expiration date in a desk drawer is now across the square building walls and drinking your tea. He does not know it is my tea. He knows. Men who carry stones and drink chamomile in towns they have no reason to be and know exactly whose tea they are drinking. Bree set down her pint. What do you want to do? I want to know if he read the letter. I want to know if he planned my disposal, or if someone planned it for him and he was too careless to notice. Because those are different things. Both are terrible. But they are different. What does your gut say? My gut says he did not write the letter. My gut says he filed it without reading it because he trusted the wrong person. My gut says he is a man who was careless with paperwork and it cost him everything. And your heart? My heart says he is drinking chamomile across the square, and I can feel the bond humming for the first time in 3 years, and it terrifies me. Bree squeezed her hand. You do not have to decide tonight. The clock is yours. She made him wait 6 weeks. She walked into the stonemason's yard on a Wednesday afternoon. October. Golden light. The kind that forgives nothing and reveals everything. Dorian was mixing mortar. She walked to the back. He saw her and the mortar bucket slipped an inch. Caught it. But the inch was enough. Alara, he said, her name in his voice. After 3 years, the sound traveled through her like a note struck on a bell she thought she had silenced. Amos says you drink chamomile, she said, every morning. Harlan says you do not complain. Complaining requires believing you deserve better. I am exactly where I should be. She looked at his hands. Mortar dust. Calluses. The hands of a man who had learned to build things instead of commanding them. Did you read it? She said. He knew immediately. No pretending. The letter. The 47 words. I found it 7 months after you left. In my own drawer. A 5-year plan that described you as a temporary alliance to be dissolved in year 3. You did not write it. No. You did not read it before I found it. No. But I filed it. It was in my drawer. I did not read it. I did not approve it. But I kept a man on my council who thought my marriage was a chess move, and I never questioned what he was planning because I trusted the system more than I paid attention to the details. You paid for my carelessness with 3 years of believing you were disposable. I kissed your cheek at the altar, she said. I kissed you goodbye, and you did not know it was goodbye. I know now. I have spent 3 years learning what that kiss meant. I have carried it in every town I searched, and I have understood, slowly, that the woman who kissed my cheek was saying I loved you and I deserved better, and both of those things were true. They were true, Alara said. They are still true. You still deserve better. He looked at his mortar-covered hands. But I am trying to become better. Not for the pack, not for strategy. For the look on your face when you kissed me and I did not know it was the last time. You cannot unring a bell, she said. No, but I can build something new beside it, something that rings differently. She looked at him for a long time. The golden light, the dust on his hands, the iron-gray eyes that held something they had not held before. Not power, patience. The patience of a man who has learned that some things cannot be commanded. You can stay, she said. His shoulders dropped. Weight carried across years and territories, finally released. But you are not My husband. Not yet. Not again. You are Dorian from the stonemason's yard, and I am Lara from the healing house, and we begin from nothing. And if I ever find another document in another drawer that reduces me to a function, I will not kiss your cheek and leave quietly. I will burn the drawer. I will hand you the match, he said. She did not smile. Not yet, but something shifted in her face. The way a landscape shifts when the first light of morning touches it. Come to the tea shop tomorrow, she said. Amos makes good chamomile. I know. I have been drinking it for 6 weeks. I know. He puts extra honey in yours. He says you look like you need sweetening. The renewal was in spring. Behind the tea shop. Amos's garden. Chamomile growing wild along the fence. Afternoon light turning everything to gold. Lara's patience came. Bree stood as witness with a pint in her hand because she said she was not crying and needed something to hold. Amos brewed a special blend and wept openly and blamed the steam. Harlan came and said nothing and nodded once, which from Harlan was a standing ovation. Ilara wore a green dress, not ivory. Green because green is the color of things that grow, and she was a healer and her life was about growth. Dorian wore a work shirt. Sleeves rolled, mortar still under his fingernails because some things do not wash off and should not. I kissed your cheek at the altar, she said. My eyes were open and yours were closed, and I was saying goodbye. And you were saying hello, and neither of us knew the other's language. She held his hands. I left barefoot. I built a healing house and a name and a life, and I learned that a woman treated as a strategy is allowed to become her own destination. You came here and carried stones and drank chamomile and waited 6 weeks while I decided whether the woman I became wanted to know the man you were becoming. You did not push. You did not command. You did not play alpha. You played human, and that is why I am here. His turn. I filed a letter, he said. I did not write it. I did not write it. I did not read it, but I kept it. And you found it. And you read 47 words that told you your marriage had an expiration date. And you kissed my cheek and walked into the night, and I spent 3 years learning what those 47 words cost me. He lifted her hands. I cannot unwrite the letter. I cannot unfile it. I cannot give you back the 3 years of wondering whether you were ever more than a paragraph in someone else's plan. But I can tell you what I know now, that I did not know then. A fool and his wife are easily parted, he said. And I was the fool. I was the man who let someone else write the terms of a marriage that was supposed to be written by 2 people. I was the man who filed a document without reading it because I trusted my counsel more than I trusted my own judgment. I was the man who spent 11 minutes in a study while his wife walked barefoot into the rain. His voice cracked. But I am also the man who carried your sketch for 3 years. The man who searched every town. The man who found you and did not knock on the door because the door was not mine to knock on. The man who carried stones and mixed mortar and drank chamomile for 6 weeks and waited because you taught me in 90 minutes of absence what you could not teach me in 8 months of presence. That love is not a ceremony. Love is a choice. Made daily, made freely, made by both people or not at all. You were never the paragraph, he said. You were the entire book, and I was a fool who let someone else write the table of contents. She kissed him, in Amos's garden, with chamomile at their feet and Bree crying into her pint and Amos humming and spring light turning everything gold, not on the cheek, on the mouth, eyes closed. Both of them, no one looking at the exit, no one counting minutes. 2 people standing in a garden where things grow, choosing to grow together. Here is where I leave you tonight. They said she kissed his cheek at the altar and never came home. They were right, but they left out the 11 days. The 47 words, the coins in the hem, the barefoot walk, the tea shop and the chamomile and Amos humming, the stonemason and the mortar. The 6 weeks of waiting. The green dress. They told the story of a woman who left, They should have told the story of a woman who chose herself. Here is what I want you to carry out of this room tonight. The people who plan your future without asking you are not always cruel. Sometimes they are careless. Sometimes they are so focused on the architecture of their ambition that they forget the building has people living inside it. And when the building shakes, they are surprised. They were just rearranging the furniture. But you are not furniture. Your heart is not a floor plan. You are not a paragraph in someone else's 5-year plan. Still waters run deep, and the quietest woman in the room is often the one holding the whole thing together. When she leaves, the room does not just empty, it collapses, and the people who never noticed she was the foundation are left standing in the rubble wondering what happened. If someone has filed your expiration date in a drawer they thought you would never open, hear me. You are allowed to kiss them on the cheek, eyes open, and walk out barefoot. You are allowed to build a healing house in a town that does not know your name yet, but will love you by the time it learns it. You are allowed to grow chamomile and make friends and teach your hands to heal instead of hold on. And if the man who filed the letter shows up 3 years later carrying stones instead of a crown, you are allowed to make him wait. You are allowed to watch from your window. You are allowed to take 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years. The clock is yours. It was always yours. Every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. The man who filed the letter became the man who carried stones. The woman who was called a function became the heart of an entire town. People change. Plans do not have to be destiny. And the kiss you give when you are leaving can become, years later, the kiss you give when you are choosing to stay. You are not a strategy. You are not a phase. You are not a bridge to someone's better option. You are the destination. You have always been the destination, and anyone who cannot see that does not deserve the view. Where are you right now? What time is it? Are you in bed, on the floor, in a car? Tell me. Drop a comment below. Tell me the moment that cracked you open. Was it the 47 words? The chamomile? The mortar on his hands? The green dress instead of ivory? The inch the mortar bucket slipped? I want to know. I read every single one. If this is the first voice you have heard on this channel, you found it because something in Alara recognized something in you. Stay. Subscribe. Hit the bell. There are more stories here. Some will break you. Some will rebuild you. All of them are yours. This family, destined heart, we do not file people in drawers. We set them on the table, in the light, where they belong. I will see you in the next one. Sweet dreams, wolves. You are everything.